the steps to success are exactly the same. You're in here and you're working your 40 hours a week, but with an abundance mentality, you actually have the opportunity to put in more hours, put in more time, save your money properly, build whatever you want to build, whether it means building a home back in Mexico or setting money aside for a car, for school, or for your own business model, right? It's still the same formula.
Yeah.
Exactly the same formula.
And it's just making sure that they have that, helping them get to that, and then reminding them of that. Welcome to the Deeper Than Dough podcast.
Yes.
Jorge/George Garcia. I was just talking with somebody, maybe it was Angela, who worked for Costa Vida. And I called you George, and she's like, "That's not George, that's Jorge." I was like,
love her, dude. She's so good.
I was like, I don't know. He's introduced himself as George, but his name's spelled Jorge.
Yeah.
My wife's Mexican. Maybe I could call him Jorge.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can. You sure can. You, my mom, and my wife. There you go. And Angela.
Well, and me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Can't forget me.
Anyways, man, I'm super excited that you're on.
So am I.
Dude, how was
Yeah.
Cinco de Mayo?
It was the busiest day of the year for us.
Sick.
Yeah,
That's
it is. It's always the busiest day. I mean, full fleet of trucks is out there and just
Didn't you say you had
banging
like
it.
20 something events that you had to do over
Oh
the
my
weekend?
gosh, we had a little bit over 20 events. Yeah, 10 trucks, and then our restaurants were just packed. Yeah,
That's a good day.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
grateful. Yeah, really good.
Which is, and where are you from originally?
Originally born in California, Santa Cruz.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking that you were going to tell me somewhere in Mexico, and then I was going to say, is Cinco de Mayo even in Mexico?
It is. It actually is.
In
but yeah.
Tijuana, when I lived there, it wasn't, and in Chihuahua, it's not either.
Yeah. So my parents are from Jalisco, from Guadalajara.
Okay.
Yeah, Guadalajara. My mom from Zapopan, and my dad is from a little town 45 minutes outside of Guadalajara called Villa Corona.
Okay.
Which is a big deal actually in Utah as well. So.
And Cinco de Mayo, was it there or in those in that region?
Oh yeah, I mean it's celebrated. It's celebrated just regionally and
See,
nationwide.
in Tijuana, it wasn't. Both years when I was there on my mission, nothing was for
Well,
Cinco de Mayo.
Tijuana is a melting pot, though. It's
Yeah,
a
it's
melting pot of South America. Really, is what Tijuana ends up being.
But like my wife and her family, they've never heard of Cinco de Mayo, and they've all lived in. I mean, they still live in Chihuahua. My wife's the only one that lives here. So
Yeah,
kind of funny. But I know it's some different parts.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Anyways, man. Well, thanks for coming on. So, Deeper Than Dough. I don't know how much we prepped you, but
You haven't.
it's more than money, right? Deeper Than Dough, more than money, about finding joy and fulfillment in life, usually through business, because we're business owners. So let's start with your background, though, if you don't mind. I know you're an expert in restaurants.
Oh my gosh, I don't know that I can give myself that label, but
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you.
Thanks.
There's no avoiding that.
But growing up in California, so we grew up. I grew up from migrant parents. So both of them came out to the U.S. to work out in the fields of California. So all that Salinas, Watsonville Valley there on the coast of Monterey Bay, we were migrant families. So we actually lived in migrant camps. Where at the end of the year, November, December, January, we would have to pack up and go back to Mexico. So I actually got the best of both worlds. So I was born in California, but we would pack up and entourage all the way just back to Mexico and be out there for those winter months while the fields dried up, right?
What years how old were you when this was
Born in 75.
Okay.
And we did that for the first 14 years. So literally first year and a half, I've got the neatest picture in my phone, but the first year and a half, we lived in a one-car garage. So mom, dad, and myself. And again, every single year, you lived in a different home, literally. A campground for migrant workers. And take off, come back, you get a completely different home. First 14 years. So went to school, again, living in that lifestyle, and the beginning of high school, again, living in that migrant family lifestyle.
I love how you said I had the best of both worlds, because I would say 99 other people would say I didn't have the best of both worlds, because I was always moving in a small house, and I love you just shifted your whole experience by saying that. That's which is awesome.
You know what? I don't know that I've ever thought of it differently. Right? Really, now that you bring that up, you're the very first person that brings that up. But yeah, I don't know that I've ever thought of it differently. I think we we had what we needed, right? You had a roof over your head, you had food, and you had a loving family. So I feel like we had what we needed, and we really didn't long for much. Which is,
it's all the perspective, and your perspective has always been a gratitude. Anyways, that was the first thing I noticed when you're like living in a foreign country for 3 months of the year, messing up with schooling system, like that's hard. And what you said was, I had the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Thank you.
Which is freaking awesome.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Neat. It's pretty neat to look at it that way. Right. But yeah, so my grandfather would bring out, call them braceros. They're still called that to this day, which is the folks that would come out and work the fields. All right. So when he retired from working in the strawberry fields, I believe he was about 62 years old. I had to have been about 6 years old. He decided to start a food business and take food out into the fields. And he was the very first person that I remember telling me, we have to take food to the people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so literally that's how the home business started at Grandma's house, making tamales, burritos, and tortas, sandwiches, and packing them up and taking them out into the fields, right? So he started at the house making tamales. He would grab his guitar, and at night, this is right after he retired, pack up one of those old school igloo coolers, that poke the sides and bend down, red and white, and he would take his guitar, go to the cantinas, and play his guitar and sell his tamales at the cantinas.
Heck yeah, I love that.
So that's how he got his start with the food. And again, realize this is a whole community of migrant workers. So it was like a little Mexico in the middle of Watsonville, California. Yeah. So everybody knew each other. Everyone was going to work this next day out into the fields. And that turned into, hey, you should be taking this food out into the fields, right? There's no food out there. You know that. We all know that. And that's where he decided, hey, let's take this food out to the people. And we started going out there. And I think I was 8 years old at the time. He had an old F-150 baby blue pickup truck, took the bed off and put one of those silver, we used to call them roach coaches back in the day. Big silver box. Back end was a heating element, like an oven. Yeah. One side was cold and one side was dry. And again, I was 8 years old, and the first thing I sold was cigarettes. Okay, so Marlboro boxes of cigarettes, and I would sit there in the cabin. He wouldn't let me run around too much. Sit there in the cabin, and he literally taught me to pull out
one at a time.
Pull out one cigarette and just show it to the guys as they were passing by, and they would come by, grab it, give me a quarter. Grab it and give me a quarter. Can you imagine? I mean, that packet back then I think sold for probably $1.25.
And you're selling them a quarter a smoke.
Yep. So I got my start at selling just that way. And those were the little things that hustling. I think he played on that, right? He realized, okay, who's going to deny this kid first off? Who's going to steal from him? Nobody. Yeah. And it was interesting because as I got a little bit older, I'm sitting there and he taught me to look at the mirror and see who was grabbing dry stuff as well. Right, because I was on the side with the chips and the cookies and all that stuff, and he's like, "You got to keep an eye on the store from that side." So I was there hustling, selling the cigarettes, but I had to keep an eye on that. And then if anyone stole, I would identify them. I would tell Grandpa, "Hey, such and such took off with a bag of chips or whatever." So he'd get them next time. Yeah, it was fun.
So that was the framework of how to sell, how to pay attention, work ethic. Yeah. And then that led to just name the restaurants that you've been involved with real quick, and then we'll jump into the meat and potatoes.
Oh my goodness, quite a few places down in Palm Springs. So I lived down in Palm Springs for a little while. Started off with just a bunch of mom and pop locations, all full service. So at this time I was doing all full service, sit down, waiting, and cooking. All right. As I came out to Utah, I was 19 years old when I came out to Utah. And I started working for Golden Corral at the time. I literally just needed a job. So I was coming out here to visit my mom. She'd been out here since I was 17. So I came out here a couple times to visit my mom. And at one point I ran out of the cash that I would bring with me. And I just decided, all right, I just need to get a job. So I jump in there and start working at Golden Corral. So here's the interesting thing about that. This was 28 years ago, right? There wasn't a lot of Hispanics in the market. But I was able to jump into this restaurant industry and really become a conduit between front of the house and the back. Front of the house typically ran by Americans and English speaking only, and the back of the house typically ran by Hispanics, Spanish speaking only, right? So here I come from California speaking both languages, and I realize, holy cow, I've got an edge.
Yeah.
I'm that conduit. I'm the one communicating between front of the house and back in the house, right? Where out in California, growing up the way I did, I was just someone else. I was just a Chicano speaking Spanish and English, and really, I kind of don't like saying this, but nothing special, right? Nothing special in the communities that we were in, but coming out here, realizing, holy cow, I can. At this point, I think I frame it a little bit differently, where I say, you know what, I was really fighting for those guys in the kitchen, right, and being that communication point for the people that are typically running these industries, right? And nothing against any of those folks, but there is a communication gap between the English speakers only and the Spanish speakers only. Not only the language, but culturally, right? What are those folks really looking for? And we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later, because I actually try to use that now to help motivate and inspire the people that I work with, is really asking them, or more so reminding them, what are you here for, right? What are you here for? Because I grew up with the migrant parents, and I got to understand their American dream, right? And typically the American dream for someone that's coming to the U.S. or Mexico is to sustain your family here, but to also build something back home, right? So to understand that dynamic in that Hispanic culture, I believe is very important. And your folks will work really hard, and they'll be loyal, especially if you understand them and know exactly why they're here and what they're doing to really survive, because they're just not surviving here, they're also building something back there, right? And then we can get into really what are the lessons behind that.
That's deep.
That's really cool. Yeah, well, just understanding what they're here for. What are some other answers when you're helping them find that purpose or remind them of that purpose? If maybe they're not in that situation, is there other things that people share with you as far as their purpose and working in the business, right, and the food industry? Yeah,
and I think at a certain point you can sit there and you can focus on the Hispanic community and that migrant community that has perhaps that American dream, right? But when you step back and you take away cultural identifiers and whatever labels you want to put on that, the formula for success is actually the same for everybody. Whether it's my child that's growing up under my roof with the opportunities that they have, or your kids, or you growing up in the U.S. with whatever circumstances you're in, take away those labels. The steps to success are exactly the same. You're in here and you're working your 40 hours a week, but with an abundance mentality, you actually have the opportunity to put in more hours, put in more time, save your money properly, build whatever you want to build, whether it means building a home back in Mexico or setting money aside for a car, for school, or for your own business model, right? It's still the same formula.
Yeah.
Exactly the same formula.
And it's just making sure that they have that, helping them get to that, and then reminding them of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just keep reminding them that, right? Because there's so much noise out there that drags them away, that takes them away from those goals. Whether it's partying or whatever whatever label whatever thing you want to put on there that distracts us, it's everywhere. Yeah. But you just got to bring them back a little bit.
And we've had this conversation before, but how do you create the culture of openness within? We can use Jurassic Tacos right now, but that's how you've created such a loyal culture with your employees to help them be more loyal and produce more. and having that open communication with them. As an employer, that's not always the easiest thing to come in and be like, here's my goals, here's my ambitions, right?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I'll go back to a quote that I remember, and I forget who the author was, but he said, "Curiosity breeds love." Okay, so just being curious about people, walking into your business, into your organization, into your kitchen, into whatever business model that you're in, and just be curious. Just really, really be curious in those individuals, and you start breeding that love, right? And in business, I think we're getting so far ahead right now in business that speaking of love is actually turning into something normal, right? We're destigmatizing that in the business world. Well, what does that love breed beyond that? It breeds trust, right? And when you have trust, then people can be vulnerable with you as well, right? And then they start sharing really what they want in life. Yeah, so that's a great question.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I love the. I mean, I really think that as entrepreneurs, a lot of us are moving more towards like, what are we doing for our employees other than a paycheck?
Yeah.
You know, how are they becoming better people? How are they going to, especially like a Jurassic Tacos, or even more applicable to Dirty Dough, we were hiring college kids all the time or teenagers, and it's not we don't want them to work with us forever, you know? So it's like, how do you build them up and then be excited when they leave?
Yeah.
Because you've taught them, you know, these different skills or whatever.
I love that. I love that you bring that up because it's a means to an end for so many people, and it can be that way, right? And it could be monotonous, and it could be not rewarding. Making a taco, making a cookie, or putting a car part on somewhere, right? But I think if you're a values-driven company and you instill values and principles, those values and principles are transferable not only into other jobs, but different parts of their life, right? Their marriage, their friendship, their relationships with their friends, colleagues, and parents, right, and siblings. Is having a values-driven company is what I believe is important, right? And you're right. My demographic, my age demographic in Jurassic Tacos right now has got to be somewhere between 16 and 23 years old.
Yeah,
that's the brunt of my of my crew.
And you want to give them a career path, but not everybody's going to have the career path. And then so it's like for all those other people, I feel like maybe this was just me, but it's like, oh, I'd hate to see anybody leave because that means I'm not doing a good job as, you know, the boss or the employer. Where I think that was a false mindset. And it's like, oh, now this person developed more skills to go get a better job that suits what they want to do. Yeah. That's awesome. And I think where that got developed for me was sales, because you recruit people and you get paid overrides. If they don't sell anything, you don't get paid. Yeah. So it's like, well, I invested all the entire summer training them, and then the next year they want to go sell for a different company or a different product or get out of door to door. And I was like, oh, that was a blow to me. And then the more I dove into it, I was like, no, that's really cool. Like I taught them sales skills to give them the opportunity to the next job. And then it's like, sweet, congratulations for finding a better opportunity.
How many people would you say you've coached to that level in your careers?
To go like coaching them, so when they go to a different business, you're still So I do consulting calls with well, let me start with Justin. You know Justin. He does sales for us. Freaking love the dude. He did pest control in 2016 with me, and I thought the summer was a failure because I was just like, oh, it wasn't as easy for everybody else to sell as it was for me. And then the next year he came out and we did satellite together. And the next year he came out and we did Vivint together. Then I started a solar company, and then he ran the inside sales division. And now he's with Dirty Dough. And then now he's starting another online sales company. He's still selling for Dirty Dough, but I'm helping him out with that, which I'm like, I freaking love Justin. I'll do anything for him. And then the other guys that work for the solar company and Vivint, actually, so I've been with them for a while. Now they have their own solar company. And they left my solar company to go start their own solar company, which was totally fine. And now they're, I spoke with them again last week. Hey, we're running into this problem or this problem. Those are the first three people that come off the top of my head.
So would you say that at this point and I'm sure you've coached hundreds, right? would you say that there's even a formula for those individuals? And I know everyone's got different personalities, different characteristics and traits, but there's a formula, right?
I think the biggest piece of that formula is values as you're teaching them. And that's what I always recruited off of isn't how much money you're going to make. It's what are you going to learn? What are the skills? Because it doesn't matter if you make 10 grand in the summer or 250 grand in the summer, that money's going to be gone sooner rather than later. But if you learn how to be a better communicator, a harder worker, a better organizer, a better professional salesperson, overcoming objections, then that is what's going to carry with you. So, and then I started recruiting based off of that. And then I didn't, because somebody would make 20 grand in the summer. And it's like, oh, well, that's not nearly as much as I made. They're a failure. Because I was putting success, the label of success or failure, where they're like, no, 20 grand was all I wanted. You wanted me to make 40. I only wanted to make 20. Leave me the hell alone. You know, like I'm doing my own thing. So I think focusing on not the job, but the skills and the values there.
Yeah.
Is a big thing.
I've found that I can take anyone and as long as they're motivated enough and want it bad enough and have a clear goal, then I can give them those values, those principles, and those pieces to follow. And we're similar industries, right? But at the end of the day, you give them those pieces of the puzzle, and they follow it diligently, and eventually they break through. And it's like, you don't even need to say "I told you so." At that point, you just say, "Man, I'm so proud of you."
Yeah.
Right in the back of your mind, you're saying, "Yeah, you know what? I knew it all along. I saw it in you. You just had to believe it yourself."
See, that sales industry, because you only get commission. It's commission based, right? So you recruit somebody, you train them. If they sell, you get commissions off of that. So it's very, in a way, toxic. Of like, I'm not going to let anybody leave my organization, even if they find, like, I'm selling security. Somebody wants to sell solar. That's a much higher ticket item. That's probably better for their sales career. But I want to convince them to sell security because that's where I make my money. So it's really being like, no. That's awesome that they're now going to the next, their next level and kind of being proud. And it was really just separating the financial success because it's like, oh crap, I have to start over again. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you have to ask, are you happy?
Yep.
Right? And that is so different for everybody when you ask them if they're happy. And if they're not, then you identify what is going to make them happy.
Yep.
And then you lay out a plan for them to help them achieve that level of happy, right?
Yep.
And that loyalty, that translates into the business. People do stay longer, but I always celebrate when people leave. It's like they're going on to the next part of their career and to the next challenge that fulfills them. Like that as a business owner is so fulfilling. Like I encourage that. And like one of my goals is to be able to invest into their companies. Like that's fulfilling. Yeah. Because I know what they're going to do. I know how they're going to perform. Like those are the best bets you can make.
Yeah. I've at times I've said that people in my industry have a shelf life. Okay. And if I know that there's a shelf life for that individual, 6 months to 2 years is really the typical shelf life for someone in the food industry. And I will usually say that at the beginning of the hiring process. Hey, listen, I know that you're only going to be here for a certain amount of time. And realistically, I'm going to have you here anywhere between 6 months to 2 years. Let's work together, whether it's 6 months or 2 years, to really give you the skills to be successful in life, right? Because you've got these 16 to 23-year-olds that at times you as the employer or maybe your workspace is probably the most positive workspace that they're going to, positive space, period. Because we don't know what they're dealing with at home and everything else that's going on in life, right? So really, I've almost made it my goal for my workspaces to be those spaces that really build people's energy up to the point where they walk out the door. I want them to feel like they can take on the world. Yeah. Right? Because I don't know what they're going to encounter out there. And man, that fills my bucket. To identify people and to really dial them into the point to where I can give them that much positive energy to feel like, man, I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to take on the world. That's really neat.
I love it. Why'd you choose food? Is it just because that's the route you did? I mean, you went, knowing your dad's history and where you grew up, or do you feel like you relate to it more than, I mean, because what I'm getting at, you could go do any business you want, right? Business skills are business skills, and you're a business guy. Why are you still in food?
It chose me. I left. I left the food industry. I left the food industry when I was 26. Okay. First off, I didn't graduate high school. I dropped out of high school my freshman year. I won't bore you with the details. They're actually kind of colorful. We'll save those for later, though. So I left high school my freshman year, and went straight into the just the professional business, the professional food world, right? And for about a decade, I felt that the industry attracted the bottom of the barrel. A lot of the high school dropouts, a lot of the folks that didn't have the higher education and whatnot, right? And I ended up living in that space for a very long time, to the point where I got really frustrated, especially when I got into management. Mm-hmm. I got into management, and I didn't want to be like those managers above me. I didn't want to be the one constantly disciplining people, constantly course correcting them, constantly firing people, all that stuff. I didn't want to be that manager. And I was a manager, right? I didn't understand the difference between a manager and a leader at that point. So literally, my wife signed me up to go to school, registered me to go to school. And I show up and to talk to the counselor, and he's like, well, here's what you need. Can you bring me your high school transcripts? What high school transcripts? Right? Got nothing. Well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go take the GED test. You're going to fail, but you're going to come back with that, and you'll know exactly where you failed, and you have 2 more chances to take the test. You're going to go study, then you can come back, and we'll get you your GED, and then you can start your business and marketing.
Start with the failure.
Right? Start with the failure.
Which isn't typical advice, but I absolutely love it, because it is so true. If you start with failure first, then you do know exactly what to study, rather than just study everything.
Yeah, identify where we need to hone in your skills, right?
And is that what you did? Did you just go take it and fail the first one and then figure it out from there?
I passed it.
There you go. Passed it.
I passed it.
But anyways, I just feel like that takes some good vulnerability to go. You're like, oh, I'm not going to study for it. My counselor says I'm going to fail.
I went there within like 48 hours. I said, okay, well, let's go.
I love it.
So let's go identify. Let's go identify.
You weren't scared of the failure, and then you ended up passing.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds.
So I went into school, and I jumped right into business and marketing. And here's a couple of things that I identified. One, the environment that I was in, I had full control over it, but I chose not to have control over it.
Yeah.
I was fully accountable for that environment as well, but I wasn't holding myself accountable for it. Okay? And that really came out of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. That was the very first book I had read in over 12 years. That's where I realized, holy cow, I'm responsible for the environment that I'm in. So I started coming back to work, and I was a beast. And to the point where I was just firing people just for the silliest things, right? And I was paying for it, right? Because it was late nights by myself and all this stuff. But like, people started to get out of my way. It was like just tearing off a cast, right? That been on my arm for so many years, and everything was just atrophied, and I had to build it back up. But I was building myself back up, that personality, and what was I willing to accept? Really is what I started practicing at that point. And that's when I started to shift into, okay, I've got to stop managing, and I've got to start helping people hold themselves accountable for their actions as well. And they had a choice, right? They had a choice to do the work or not do the work. But I also had a responsibility. I had to go in and teach and coach and empower and provide the right tools, because you just can't expect someone to do their job if they don't have the right tools, if they don't have the right training, and if they don't have the right environment to grow, right? So yeah, I mean, that I would say has been the last 2 decades of my career. Is just really continually trying to sharpen that skill set of helping people feel empowered and accountable, and just allow them to grow.
Love it.
What are some other keys to success for empowering people?
Oh my gosh, I really do believe everybody wants to be held accountable. That I really do believe that in my heart of hearts, that everyone wants to be held accountable, but you've got to teach them, right? You got to teach them, and you've got to give them opportunities to rise.
Why does everybody want to be held accountable? And let me try to answer it and tell me if it matches up with yours. Is it that people want to be recognized and measured for one, it's fulfilling, right? If we're measuring success and somebody's holding us accountable, I can now see my own progress, and I also get the praise from somebody else seeing my progress. Do you feel like that's the
100% nailed it?
I love that.
Yeah.
Because usually most people would say the opposite, right? People don't want to be held accountable because they don't want to be stressed out, right?
Well, it's such accountability tends to be such a bad word.
Yeah.
It's just like discipline, right? I mean, I see you in the gym. That takes, you're holding yourself accountable every single morning to show up. And you're being disciplined enough to go in there and put in the work because you are you're looking for a certain result, right? So accountability and discipline, I think, should be just normal words that you use, and people should not fear them. Don't fear them, right? That's the first thing. Lean into it. Lean into accountability and discipline, and you'll be far more successful if you do that.
Such a mindset shift. Mental health.
Yeah.
We're doing some stuff together
Yeah.
with the mental health and your son. And anyways, what got you and your son into mental health? And then
Oh my gosh, how much
Caden,
time do we
right?
have?
I
Yeah,
know.
Caden. Yeah.
we got
I
8
love-
minutes.
I love that kid. No, I've got it down to 3 minutes. Mental health. I started running about 12 years ago for my own mental health, for addiction recovery. Literally, my wife would say, "Hey, go." I love my wife. Go look at where she's led me, right, into this business world, into understanding my own.
She's pretty epic.
Right? She's
I need to meet her.
very epic.
I need to
I
meet
can't
her.
wait for
We'll
you to meet
do
her.
dinner.
Yeah, and she's like, "No, go run," right? And she would see the signs of Jorge when he would be spiraling down. It's like, "There's your shoes. Go run," right? So I started running, again, about 12, 15 years ago. And then we actually started a pacing team, a volunteer pacing team that would run inside of marathons, and literally with a little stick saying, "This is when I'm going to finish this race." And for anyone that's ran a half marathon or full marathon, there's a time frame that will qualify you for Boston, New York, Chicago. Go out, and I'm saying, "Hey, I'm going to finish this race at this time. Stay with me, and I'll guarantee that we'll finish it at this time." So we started doing that about 10 years ago as a volunteer group across the state of Utah. So that led into us meeting a bunch of different groups that were doing similar things, but in particular, a group called Addict to Athlete, where Blue Robinson and his wife, Marissa, started taking former addicts, and as a form of rehabilitation, they were taking them out on runs.
Love that.
So we started bringing them into our pacing team, and they started running with us, telling their story while we were running.
That's awesome.
That completely opened my eyes to just the possibilities of literally what running really can do for people, right?
And you were using it not as I need to go burn some calories, but I need to go get release energy and endorphins and get my mind right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think to that point, runners, especially at that caliber, they're either running from something or running for something.
Nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably the biggest piece that's out there for just not necessarily debate, but really what are you running for or towards or running away from, right? And there is a lot of mental health that really goes into it. So that literally has rolled into a certain part of Caden's life. When he was 13, he lost a friend to suicide. Okay, really good friend. Fast forward a little bit, and somewhere in between there, I had a heart attack, and the attention came to me. So I was stripped of all my running. I was stripped of my work identity because I was a complete workaholic. So I was utilizing running, yes, as a good, healthy source to give me mental health, but I was also using business and travel and all that to fulfill my own personal just egotistical
identity at the time.
needs, right? So I end up having a heart attack and everything stopped. And depression kicked in, anxiety kicked in, and all this just loss of self-identity where I'm not getting the endorphins anymore. I'm not getting the rush from meeting and exceeding goals in the professional world, right? All these things, and it's like, here we are. I mean, I wasn't a vegetable by any means, but my output wasn't the same. I had to take naps at 2:00 in the afternoon for about 3 or 4 months, right? So all that kicked in, and stack on that all the medication and everything that you have to be taking for the conditions that you're in. I spiraled. I completely spiraled, right? Where I even had to deal with a couple of bouts of medically or medicine-induced psychosis with a couple medications that just didn't react right for me. I mean, to the point where I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter and I wrote it in an email and I sent it to my wife, you know, and that really woke everyone up. It woke me up as well because I didn't realize what I was going through with this medication, with everything that I was dealing with. Got that taken care of through some therapy and some different medications as well, and a little bit more homeopathic way of living.
And can we talk just for a second?
Yeah.
When you sent the email, was it your wife that approached you? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are in this situation where they might not be that extreme, but they don't know where they're at.
My wife, I was coming home and I was impossible to be around. I mean, I was coming home and I was kicking the dog, and I mean, I was just absolutely impossible to be around. And it literally started off as, I don't know what's happening in my mind.
Yeah.
It was an apology for everything that I was doing, and it wasn't necessarily it wasn't a suicide note per se, but it was I'm at the end of my rope.
Yep.
Completely at the end of my rope. I don't know what to do, right? And she came to me, and we called a couple of friends that are doctors and psychologists and talked to them, and really that was the course correction that I needed, and really just to reach out to somebody, right? To reach out to her, and let her know what I was dealing with. At about that time frame is when Caden lost a couple more kids in school, a couple more colleagues in school. So they lost a gal right before graduation, 2 weeks before graduation at his high school.
And this is Spanish Fork?
Springville High.
Springville.
Yeah, Springville High. And then that winter in October, they lost another boy. And that's where everything came back to Caden as well. He hadn't dealt with all of those emotions and everything that he probably should have dealt with when he was 13, and it all came back. So that's where we decided to just really try to do something about it. And the biggest when I asked him what was missing, their response, him and his friends, I brought him over for lunch that day when I took him out of school, and his biggest thing was, we don't know where to turn to, right? So we decided to make shirts with positive words on the front. We took the I's and we removed those, and we put the semicolon, which is significant in the suicide ideation world, right? And then we put the hotline on the back of the shirts. And I printed 13 of them, gave them to all of their friends, and they just said, okay, we're going to wear them to school. They were so scared to wear them to school because they didn't know how anyone was going to react.
Yeah.
Right? So they put them on, they go to school, and all of the counselors loved them. Long story short, we started selling shirts, and we started donating the money back to the school districts by way of providing coaching for teachers and counselors.
Love it.
So that year, 2018, we covered the whole Nebo school district.
That's so cool.
So we brought the QPR courses, the coaching to every single, to 7 junior highs and 5 high schools.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was between 2018 and 2020. And you can go look at the...
Hats off to Caden for
Yeah.
wearing those shirts. I mean, think about you wearing a anti-suicide shirt to high school.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't put my freaking reputation on this, you know? I mean, I know it's a little bit different now, but
It is. This was 5-6 years ago, right?
That's brave. That's so cool that it started with you guys coming together with the plan, but then it's those kids wearing that to school.
Yeah. And I mean, and at this point, we've sold shirts across the U.S.
And what's the brand called?
Your Tribe Clothing. Yeah, Your Tribe Clothing. But so that has now evolved into this whole run for mental health piece that we're working on right now. And that is to bring these runs into schools, to bring resources to schools, to bring an event to a school where together the community, everyone that's involved, yourself, Dirty Dough, your foundation, the Life is Sweet Foundation, the Run for Mental Health Foundation, to come into these schools and bring resources that are already in the community, that the community does not know about. Right? That's the whole purpose behind it. And to raise money for whatever else is needed for those schools to provide mental health courses or whatever they need in their schools. So that's literally what it's evolved to right now, and that's really what we're focusing on.
I love it. And both times when I met with you and Caden, to see that's just such a dynamic duo. Father and son tackling mental health. Both went through your own issues, and now you're helping other people.
Yeah, love it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyways, that's where we'll end it because you can't get better than that.
Love it.
We'll have to have you on another time because I got another 50 questions for you.
Dude, I love it. Yeah, we need to do this more often. I think we can go on so many different directions, man.
Yeah.
Sure appreciate you guys and everything you guys are doing, man. I sure love you guys.
Love you too, man. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, you bet.